Oh, see, fuck, God damn it, I keep complaining about the lack of beeps, but whatever. We are live for the Bellator Vivisection. I am your host, Zane Simon, joined by my esteemed co-hosts, Eddie Mercado, Victor Rodriguez, and we are going to talk about Bellator 154, and we're probably going to have a pretty brief show, frankly, because this is not a very deep card. Despite Bellator's attempt to put together a pretty fun card that would have had Josh Thompson versus Michael Chandler and Sergey Haratonov versus Josh Aplett on it, and unfortunately Jordan Parsons versus Adam Piccolotti as well, although Piccolotti has stayed on the card. We just do not have that. We have Phil Davis versus King Mo and then some stuff.
They
Yeah,
tried,
no.
almost.
Yeah.
I mean, it was close.
It's made worse because it's going up head-to-head with, well, slightly earlier than, but still more or less head-to-head with UFC 198. Like, on my schedule, it's head-to-head with UFC 198 because it's going to be tape delayed. So, I can't watch it until 8 p.m. Eastern Time, or 8 p.m. Pacific, and I'm not going to, I mean, unfortunately, the end result is that even I'm still kind of more interested in Damian Maia versus Matt Brown than King Mo versus Phil Davis.
Oh, for sure.
So it's a tough day. It's a tough day to get to for Bellator to really push this card. Still, we're gonna talk through our way through it as best as possible. Certainly, we'll talk the main card. Maybe a couple fighters, maybe highlight a couple people on the prelims. Eddie, just to jump right into this, do you have anybody on the prelims that you're interested in seeing that you think might do something and jump off the page a little?
First off, you can find me on Twitter at the Eddie Mercado. Get that out of the way.
Hustle.
But yeah, it's there's a couple guys. Dasanabi Muhammad, I'm actually interested to see him fight. He is an undefeated fighter, 4-0. 3 of those have come by way of submission. He's got heavy hands, but he'll jump on your back and try to choke you out. Whoa!
Wow, that is what happened.
The world is ending.
There you go.
Nuclear fallout. He's fighting Martin Sano, legacy fighting guy. So it should be a scrappy match. Both guys are going to come forward. And I'm also interested in seeing Mark Dickman fight. He's a one-kick Nick guy. He went to war with Justin Lawrence in the RFA. So I'd like to see where he's at now in his career. I'm glad to see Bellator pick him up. So.
I was also surprised. I didn't even, I was looking down over these prelims, and Darren Uyenoyama's on them. The Bone Crusher. I did not expect to see him on this Bellator card. I don't know. He's been out floating around in PXC, so I guess now he's back. I don't know if he's fighting for Bellator long term, but it's interesting to see him, especially because he's fighting at a catch weight because they don't have a flyweight division, so he's at 130 pounds.
Yeah, I think he is going to be at bantamweight. I guess when he got released from the UFC, he had 2 fights in Guam and in the PXC, and now he's coming to Bellator. So yeah.
What about you? Who are you excited to see on this undercard, Vic?
Well, the undercard is actually, this is very reminiscent of like the Strikeforce era, I guess, in some ways. We already mentioned Uyenoyama. You've got Strikeforce mainstay Thomas Diagne, who's also going to be on the undercard as well. He's capable of putting on some pretty fun performances, and Stephanie Frausto, who is Zoila Frausto's younger sister. Pretty crazy pace that she puts on sometimes. She's pretty exciting sometimes, and she's had 2 bouts, I think it was, in Invicta, and she's fought for Bellator before a long time ago, but she's at it again now, and that might be something nice. But as for the rest of it, mostly just local regional fighters that are rounding things out, and yeah, I mean, it's probably just something for the home crowd, for the people that are there live, so it is what it is.
Yeah. All right, so without further ado, I'm just going to jump straight into the first bout on the card, a lightweight fight between Adam Piccolotti and Ray Wood. Obviously, originally supposed to be Adam Piccolotti versus Jordan Parsons before the tragic hit and run accident that ended up killing Parsons and, you know, was just sort of really kind of hangs over this whole thing right now, just for the immense tragedy that it was. But surprisingly, they kept Piccolotti on the card. I know that wasn't something originally planned. It seems like they were able to bring in Wood, who's a pretty accomplished guy off the regionals, to come in and fight him. And Vic, what are your thoughts on this fight?
Well, yeah, this card, I mean, obviously the very biggest and most terrible of losses for this card, which was a lot more stacked than it is now. You know, every time they go to San Jose, obviously Coker's home base of operations, they do try to kind of go a little bit, not necessarily all out, but they do try to bring in a different kind of show. And you know, well, look, it is what it is. Piccolotti is going to be taking on Ray Wood, who's 7-1. Pretty much kicking around the New England scene. He is out of man, and he hasn't really fought guys that are perhaps household names, I guess. But really, all of his wins have been by a finish, except for one. And taking on a guy, Piccolotti, who's 7-0, and he's out from the West Coast scene as well. Also hasn't really fought too many guys that perhaps the average fan would know. Although this is going to be his fourth fight under the Bellator banner, and he's got some crazy submission wins too. So I mean, really, Ray's approach, part of that crazy New England wrestling, hard-nosed, gritty, in-your-face style. It's going to actually be a pretty decent contrast here because Piccolotti's not one of those guys who's going to be content with just hanging back. So this isn't something that's really likely to go to a decision. These guys are pretty much going to go in there, go after it. They're going to probably just strike in the pocket and, you know, maybe separate for a little bit, reevaluate for a few seconds, and then just start working with their grappling after a while. And then after that, I'd probably say Piccolotti would be favored, but Ray Wood probably has what it takes to finish this by submission.
All right, so you're going with Ray Wood.
Yeah.
All
Ray
right,
Wood by submission. That's an interesting take on this. I kind of feel like this is more of a striker versus a grappler match, if anything. Piccolotti, obviously, with the grappling experience that we've seen, and then Ray Wood seems to be, he seems to be pretty sharp on the feet. He's got pretty mean knees from the clinch. He's got pretty good straight punches. But I've seen him get controlled on the ground at times and kind of struggle getting back to his feet. And by someone who isn't of the pedigree that Piccolotti is on the ground. So, I don't know. I kind of feel like Ray definitely has the advantage on the feet because Piccolotti kind of has these holes in his stand-up. He's kind of more of a jiu-jitsu striker, I guess, if that makes any sense. Like, he's not exactly this polished kickboxer throwing crisp 1-2s. He kind of throwing from the hip a little bit. So there's definitely openings for Ray to get in there and do some damage. But I definitely think that Piccolotti will find a way to get the fight to the ground one way or the other, and I think he will flourish there. But I could definitely see him getting wrecked on the feet. So I think this is going to be kind of close, but I gotta edge it out to Piccolotti, and I'm going to give it to him by submission.
Yeah, I gotta say I'm going with Piccolotti too here, just because I think he's the kind of fighter, like, he's not likely to stay on his feet just because he wants to test something out. Like, he's very much more the fighter who will throw a punch, get right in on a single or a double leg, drag you to the ground, and then work really hard and really fast there to find a submission. And I just think that he's too determined in knowing his game and finding it, getting to it, to lose, especially on short notice. That's usually always a bad recipe for opponents. So,
yeah, and when he fought that Mario Soto guy, I mean, he was brutalizing him with ground and pound, his elbows, and then he sunk in the rear naked choke, and he had the blood squirting from his head. Yeah, that was so gruesome.
It's true. All right, Odds on that fight, Piccolotti is a heavy favorite, minus 385 up to minus 430. Ray Wood, the underdog, plus 358 down to plus 320. I think those are a bit extreme. Wood is a good, capable, scrappy athlete, competitive fighter. Piccolotti has not yet proven himself to just be an absolute world beater, but short notice, and Piccolotti's got a pretty complete game, so I'm not surprised he's the favorite at least. That brings us to Andre Fialho versus Rick Rieger. Welterweight bout. Eddie, what are your thoughts on this fight?
I think this is going to be an interesting fight with some up-and-comers. I think Fialho is kind of exciting the way he comes out. He's just kind of right in your face. He's got that youthful exuberance kind of style where, you know, he doesn't care. He's in there fighting you. Kind of like, it reminds me of Derek Anderson in a weird way with the kind of forward pressure. But he's also got some boxing experience, which I like. I've seen him finish guys with boxing gloves on. So, I mean, he definitely has some heavy hands. He's got the killer instinct. He's tenacious. And I like his combos. I think he throws pretty decent combos. He's still young. He's still unrefined. I've seen him get hurt in a fight and survive to the next round, come back and win. And he's finished all his fights. I mean, granted, he hasn't fought anybody, but he understands that, and he recognizes that he needs to step up, fight better people, see what he's really made of. The guy he's fighting, how do you say his last name? Rieger,
I think.
Rieger. He's 7-1 with 4 submissions. Came up in the Gladiator Challenge, which, you know, there's some things to be said about that. It's kind of a can-crushing league.
I mean, he's only won fights in Gladiator Challenge. That is the only place he's ever gotten wins. Exactly.
And, you know, the guys he's fighting, I mean, they're not exactly world beaters. The last guy he fought, Tremaine Smith, is 4-14.
They're cans.
But the one guy he did fight was James Muntasiri.
Yeah.
He fought him in the RFA.
And he got slept.
He went to sleep via rear naked choke. But Muntasiri's, you know, he's not bad. He's pretty decent.
He's good.
So, you know, Reacher's a good dude. I mean, he'll change levels. He'll take you down. He'll rough you up a bit. But I think Fialho might just be a little too much for him. So
Rieger does fight out of a team called Fight Core with a K.
Okay. Fight Core with a K.
All right. Vic, take it away. You picking Rieger here?
A fucking Fight Core? I mean, come on, man. Like, you know, all right, whatever. Look, fine. Okay, no, I'm not picking Rieger. Let's put this to bed nice and early. Absolutely not. Not just because of the level of competition. I mean, well, mostly because of the level of competition. Let's be frank. You don't have a guy come out of these organizations. Yes, sure, you might find a Derek Anderson type cat that'll break through. This is not the guy, and this is not the time. I just really think that Fialo, who's got, I believe he's still training at AKA, just, you know, deals with better guys. He just, no, it just, everything about this really smells like it shouldn't even be happening, and this is just more of a showcase for the local San Jose guy, despite the fact that he's a foreigner, but whatever, let's not let that get in the way. So yeah, I'm going to let that go with Fialo by whatever the hell he wants, probably by submission too.
Well, and to be, you know, credit to them on that is that Fialo's coming off the Portuguese regional scene into Bellator, so might as well, like, make his entry soft and, you know, let him build himself up a little.
Yeah, true, but I mean, how much softer? I mean, how much worse can the let's say Southern European, you know, Spain, Portugal circuit? How much worse can that really be than Explode Gladiator? You know, I start to wonder.
I think it can be significantly worse than the guys who crush cans and Explode. Like,
maybe.
You know, a lot of those guys, even if they're not very good fighters, tend to, like, you see some guys coming up from good camps out of there, guys like out of Pinnacle and Millennia MMA, use Explode as a jumping off point or Gladiator Challenge as a jumping off point, and so they're at least better trained. Like, the guys you're going to get a lot on the on some of the like Spanish or Portuguese regional scene. Like, who knows where they're training?
I guess.
But yeah, it's definitely feels like a good setup to get Fialho a highlight win. That brings us odds on that fight. Fialho is the favorite, minus 420 to minus 385. Rick Rieger plus 348 to plus 320 or to plus 300.
Spot on. Those
yeah.
are spot on.
That brings us to the co-main event, a fight I actually really like, surprisingly. Evangelista Cyborg Santos versus Saad Awad. Vic, what are your thoughts on this fight?
You know what, man? I really like this for the fun factor more than anything. I think what we've seen lately is that neither one of these guys, I don't think either one of them really gets the sort of credit that they truly deserve for what they've done in the sport. And I think a lot of it is the fact that people just maybe look at their records, just what's on paper, and not much else. Neither one is done by any means. I do think that despite some of the stumbling blocks that especially Evangelista Santos has faced, I really don't think that I do think he's still got something there in the tank that he can still contribute and put on some exciting performances, although he has taken a lot of hits and it does become a little worrisome. But he is coming off 2 straight wins. Brennan Ward, who he just defeated by submission in less than a minute, and that fight that he took in Legacy back in January. So he's keeping himself active and fresh at the very least. Whereas Saad Awad just had that decision loss to Patrick Freire, and before that he had a nice little 3-fight win streak, and he's been kind of chugging along. Even though he hasn't been getting that many finishes as of late, it's not like his fights have been anything where he's been taking too much punishment or anything like that. He has been very, very competitive in those losses. So, all things considered, I do think that maybe, just maybe, Evangelista Santos might have more weapons to win this in terms of his striking as well as his submission game. I just think that Sawad he's a much better athlete for starters. He's fresher, younger. And I do think that his fight IQ is certainly, at this point at least, for how the MMA game works now, a lot more suited. So I'm actually going to go with Saad Awad on this one.
All right. Eddie, you more hyped on Cyborg after that win over Brennan Ward?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I can't say today, yes. If he does it again, okay, then absolutely. I'm back on board. I want to see him in big fights. I think there's a lot of upside to him at Bellator. Maybe even the trilogy with Melvin Manhoff.
Oh, God, no. No, stop.
I would watch it. I would love to watch that. The first time they fought was one of the most funnest, exciting fights I've ever seen.
Okay.
Was it not?
I mean, listen, if you think that people eating through a straw in the next 8 months is a good thing, hey, man, that's fine, I guess, I suppose.
I mean, who would be eating through the straw? It'd probably be a double knockout.
Yeah, right. I'm not too excited about the prospects of that happening. Sorry, no.
Well, I think there's more upside to Santos winning for sure. I think it's worth noting that both cyborgs are fighting this weekend on the same day. How odd is that? I haven't heard anybody mention that. But,
this is true.
Of course, we're talking about the female cyborg who's making her UFC debut on Saturday as well.
The more notable cyborg.
The more notable, more relevant, more...
better fighter.
More frightening.
Yes, all that. Bigger name, bigger everything. All right, so Saad Awad, man, what can I say? He's moving up from 155 to 170 for this fight. So that might, who knows what that's going to do. Add some muscle on him, some power maybe. He's got phenomenal BJJ. He's got improved striking. In his last outing against Pitbull, he definitely lost the stand-up battle there. But I think he showed that he has the ability to stand with world-class strikers and not get rocked. And some of his previous fights, we've seen him get dropped by lesser strikers than Pitbull. And so seeing him do fairly well against Pitbull, although he lost, still showed that, his stand-up is still improving, specifically defensively. All right, so you got Cyborg, who's been around the block forever. He's been knocked out 10 times, which that's a lot of wear and tear.
Yeah.
He's 38. He's been fighting since 1997. So, I mean, it makes no sense to pick him to win a fight in this day and age. But, it's funny because I was watching the UFC 198 Vivisection right before this, and Connor was talking about Nate Marquardt, how he's like shouldn't win any fights, but sometimes he just ends up getting the better of someone he shouldn't beat. And I think that's exactly what happened to Cyborg. Someone kind of past their prime, just making it happen. And a guy that he's more of an offensive juggernaut than a defensive juggernaut. That's Cyborg to a T. I don't know. His last fight was so weird against Brendan Ward. I feel like Brendan Ward lost that fight as opposed not so much Cyborg winning it. Brendan Ward wanted to stand with him, and Brendan Ward's the guy that initiated the clinch. So I feel like Ward lost that fight. Like that was, I don't know. This one's tough for me. I don't know. What do you make of Cyborg?
Pick the pick.
I think that with Saad Awad, I at least know what I'm getting. So I'm gonna pick Saad Awad here, but I wouldn't be surprised if Santos did something.
I almost thought for a moment you were gonna go with Santos.
I can't.
Almost. No, I was waiting for it. That's okay.
Awad is the favorite on this fight, -180 to -190. Santos, the underdog, +164 down to +155. So close odds. Both guys have a habit of losing, so it's not like either guy is an especially safe bet.
Yeah, it's a missed opportunity for a nickname too. Odd Awad that'd be pretty fun in a very Dr. Seuss way. I kind of like that.
Yeah, odd Saad Awad.
Hey.
What about Swallow? Oh, never mind. Sorry.
I mean, I'm gonna actually stop there because I mean this is a family show, so I'm gonna try to keep it clean.
I forgot we were live.
Okay. Look, now we have the main event ahead of us.
I mean, I gotta respect it.
I've never seen Zane this red before.
That was actually good. That was good though. All right, well played. Dang.
I need to learn to filter sometimes.
No. Stay exactly as you are. I like
That's
this.
right. Don't ever change on us.
No.
Okay, that brings us to our main event, Phil Davis, King Mo. I hate to do this, but Eddie, it's your turn to talk again.
Again, I get the mic. It's my floor. Okay. I am excited for this fight. I feel like these are two top guys who are hopefully going to be exciting. I pray it's exciting and not just a hugging contest against the cage, which it could turn out to be. But this is a toss-up. This is another toss-up, very close. You got Phil Davis, who came over from the UFC and ran shop in the tournament. I mean, he looked phenomenal. He looked the best I've ever seen him. I mean, granted who he was fighting, of course, Emmanuel Newton's, he's tough, but I feel like a little on the down slump, sort of, kind of past his prime. And Francis Carmont, who was only there because King Mo got hurt. So, I mean, yeah, he looked spectacular, but I don't know how much of that was just because of who he was fighting. And King Mo, I mean, he's been on a tear lately. He's been over in Risen just sleeping fools, knocking guys out. And, man, they're both phenomenal wrestlers. They're both All-American wrestlers.
They're both also slightly worse MMA wrestlers. They're both also not like amazing MMA wrestlers for their great credentials.
For sure. They have struggled to take people down that they should, on paper, have just ragdolled. Which, I mean, makes me feel like the same thing will apply to each other. Like, I don't think they'll be able to take each other down, which means they're going to be standing a good portion of this match. And Phil Davis has pretty damn good footwork. He has that alliance footwork. He's able to move in and out, which you have to do for King Mo. You can't just stand in front of him or he's going to tee off on you. On the same token, Phil Davis kind of lacks venom. So it's like, yeah, he's in and out, but he's not in and out like a Machida is in and out. Machida's in and out, but when he comes in, I mean, he's got the venom. He's hurting you. Phil Davis, it's like, okay, yeah, he knocked out Francis Carmont, but, that's Francis Carmont.
It's
Who else?
his second knockout it was the first clean KO of his entire career.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not saying he's not a powerful guy. I'm just saying he doesn't apply that to his striking or hasn't found it yet, I'll say.
Yeah, some wrestlers do that better than others as far as translating wrestling strength to their striking. Johnny Hendricks, for example. But yeah.
Well, I think it all comes down to the fact that Phil Davis just doesn't like to get hit, and his striking is representative of that. He's more of like an elusive kind of, I'll be in and out. That's why Alliance works for him, because it's his style that fits him. Kind of in and out, don't hit me, I'm going to come in, hit you, and then get back out. Whereas like a Johnny Hendricks is more of, I'm going to come in and I'm going to throw bolos, and if you react to it, I'm probably going to just take you down. Whereas Phil's, it's just different. And that's just because I just think he doesn't like to get hit. And we've seen him sometimes get a little passive when he tastes the power. We've seen him kind of shy away and be a little more reserved, doesn't throw as much because he doesn't want to get hit, and doesn't want to get close enough to the takedown or for a takedown because of the threat of being knocked out. He's never been knocked out, by the way, nor finished in any way. But he loses to heavy-handed guys who can stuff the takedown, and King Mo is that. And King Mo, he gets beat by guys that have the power to hurt him on the feet. And I'm not so sure that Phil Davis has that kind of venom. Like on paper, I think Phil Davis seems like the more clear path to victory here, but I'm just not sure he can get the respect of King Mo standing, and I don't think he can take him down. So it's hard for me to see a way for Phil Davis to pull this out. So I'm going to go King Mo here. I think he is just the style. He fits the mold of the guy that can beat Phil Davis. So, King Mo.
All right. Vic, what are your thoughts?
All right. Well, there's a couple of things to consider here with this. First off, the fact that I think a fight that really, despite the fact that it happened a couple of years ago, probably would give us a bit of insight here would be Phil Davis against Rashad Evans. Rashad just had better MMA wrestling, and that was a big thing that people were looking forward to. Whose wrestling would stand up better. Rashad uses boxing a lot better, and he kind of kept things in the range that he wanted, utilizing his movement and his timing to kind of neutralize that threat. So that being taken into consideration, I don't think that Mo is necessarily that far off from being able to replicate something similar. I do think that his boxing is a lot crisper. I do think that his boxing is very underrated. His fight IQ as well is very underrated, largely due to that Newton fight. I mean, man, that's going to make anybody look silly. Pardon me. But also, it's the fact that, despite the fact that Davis is a very dynamic athlete, he's got a very unorthodox submission game, but he's always hunting. He has to really control the guy for that to happen. And I don't see him. He can certainly take Mo down. I just don't see him controlling him for the extended period of time that he would need to start working on that and be able to get the finish that way. Not only that, I don't necessarily see his striking being on that sort of level to really give Mo the kind of fits that would actually put him away there either. So I really do think it's a lot safer to pick Mo than perhaps it may seem at first glance. So I'm actually going to go with him there. I think he's just crafty enough, and I think he's got the right tools. Davis is great, but you look at that tournament, I don't think he really. When was the last time he really fought a guy whose boxing was that sharp? It was probably Rumble. I mean, how did that go? He pieced him up from the outside, and then he shucked off his takedowns, and then
he struggled with Bader honestly on the feet as well. He got his eyes swollen.
Well, there you go. I mean, if you take that into consideration, unless he's changed things up in a very significant manner, I'm not really sure how that would happen. So I'm actually going to pick Mo on this. I don't know if he's going to be able to get the finish. I certainly think it's going to be a good fight. Certainly more competitive than some people think. Just probably with Mo having more of an advantage here too than what people would give him credit for.
My only hope is that Phil Davis, for some reason, maybe no good reason, decides that he wants to take the Dong Young Kim late career route and just fight like some crazy person because he feels like he has more pressure on himself to perform now. Don't know if that'll happen, but I feel like that happened a little bit with the Carmont fight, where he suddenly was just like, I'm going to come out and put a whooping on this guy, and like, whoa, where's this Phil Davis been for 10 years now, or 7 years now? But yeah, without that, the funny thing to me is just that how like weirdly similar these guys' careers have been. Like, they both started in 2008, reeled off some wins, hit a speed bump, reeled off a few more wins, hit a couple more speed bumps, and just, I wouldn't have thought of King Mo and Phil Davis as paralleled fighters at all, but they've kind of ended up at the same place at the same time in their careers, and that's really weird to me.
Well, it's weird, but on the same token, I think a loss hurts King Mo way more than it does Phil Davis.
The thing with King Mo, though, is that he's on like a much better streak than Phil Davis is right now. I mean,
who's even fighting, though?
Yeah, Phil Davis has a much better win over Glover Teixeira in his recent past.
And Machida, whatever you may think of the win, I mean, it's still, on paper, it still looks a lot better.
I mean, that win over, but yeah, he's got wins over Lyoto Machida and Glover Teixeira in his recent past. So those,
and another thing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
He's had a much higher high point, but King Mo's been, he beat Czech Congo and Linton Vassell and Yuri Prochazka recently, and he's on a good streak, and I think he brings a lot more outside of his wins to Bellator.
Yeah, and the thing, I think we probably talked about this before, that the significance of what he did in that Rising tournament really doesn't get the kind of attention it deserves. I mean, yeah, sure, he was fighting guys that were also more like on the upswing. A lot of those guys haven't really hit their prime yet. And not only that, but I think Mo's potential when he started out was viewed as much more than perhaps Phil Davis was. Like when
Phil Davis too was seen as the guy who could beat John Jones someday when he started out. Like, they both came in with a lot of potential, seen as a lot of potential, and they've both struggled to implement their wrestling consistently in MMA. It's just that Davis, I think, seems to push himself better athletically in fights than Mo, to apply himself better athletically in fights than Mo does, but he's a much less dangerous fighter as he does so.
That's a good point. I think Davis is definitely the better athlete and definitely has the better conditioning. I think his cardio is a lot better than King Mo's, and I think his movement is a lot better than King Mo's. King Mo's been fighting at 100 kilograms for the past 3 fights.
Yeah.
So, I mean, granted, that's only 10 pounds heavier, but he's got to cut that extra bit.
He's so much less dangerous, though. That's the thing. Like, so much less dangerous.
Yeah. And it's almost like when you have guys whose skill set is somewhat similar, it becomes who is the more physical beast in that fight. And I got to go with Mo. Yeah.
Odds on this, Phil Davis is the favorite, -210 to -240. Mo is the underdog, +180 to +187. Or to +190 rather. I kind of feel like that's a combination of UFC credit and
the tournament performance.
Recency bias with Phil Davis just coming off like this first clean knockout win of his career. But otherwise, on paper, I don't know. That seems like some weird odds. Like, I would, even if I don't think Mo's gonna win, I might be willing to put a bet on Mo.
I wouldn't even be upset with the recency bias though. Like, I get it. I totally understand it. That makes sense.
I'm a little upset with it because, I mean, there were 2 rounds. Francis Carmont. I mean,
yeah, it's just. I mean, Davis, he just has that UFC, like getting those wins in UFC really does give him a lot of, like, there's a lot of feeling like he's just going to go into Bellator and win and be champ. That's what Phil Davis is going to do. But that was also kind of seen as like what King Mo's going to do. He came over from Strikeforce and he's going to go into Bellator and be champ, and it never happened.
Yeah.
So.
And you know what? I bet you Benson Henderson is going to be the favorite in his next fight as well, regardless of who he fights.
It's true. He very likely is.
If it's at lightweight, yes.
Even if it's a welterweight, I bet he will be.
Just name value.
Because as long as he's not fighting Andrei Koreshkov, how many other Bellator welterweights can you name? It could be. But anyway, point being, I feel like the odds are a little weird on that fight. Phil Davis has only very rarely shown himself to be a dangerous fighter, and Mo has often shown himself to be a dangerous fighter. And both guys have trouble implementing the things that they were technically supposed to be best at. So should make for an interesting fight. Should make for an interesting main event. It's just too bad there's not a lot going on underneath it, and there's a massive UFC card going on right alongside it. So.
Yeah.
Gonna be hard to give this a
really
lot of
good UFC card too.
Yep.
Like that's the most stacked card I've seen from Brazil probably in a really long time.
Yeah, and even the loss of even though the loss of Anderson Silva does put a bit of a damper on it, like I mentioned the other day, but it's still a fantastic card, top to bottom. And this card really took so many hits because we lost, as we were talking about right before we started here. You lost. I was going to say Koreshkov again. Oh, my God. We lost Haratonov on this card. We lost Jordan Parsons, as we mentioned. And Josh Thompson's injury, that fight against Michael Chandler was very likely to be really, really good, and we're not getting that either. So there's a lot of name value that got lost in the shuffle here. And, that's the fight game. That's just something that's going to happen.
It's true. So, on that note, obviously we'll be covering it if something, if something really spectacular happens, we'll be sure to cover it. Otherwise, we're going to be very UFC focused the rest of the week. Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. You can find Vic on Twitter at Vic M. Rodriguez. You can find Eddie on Twitter at TheEddieMercado. You can find all three of us on Bloody Elbow in our various times, capacities, ways, means, whatever. Give this video a like, that's a thumbs up over on YouTube. Subscribe to MMANation.com. It's DOTCOM over on YouTube. That way you get all the latest Bloody Elbow interviews, analysis, shows, all that good stuff. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next time.